So, welcome to Corporate Elements. And in today's episode, we're going to deep dive into a very common topic about quitting. And we'll be discussing why it matters, what exactly it is, and how it damages the organization, and whether our brains wired for it, and most importantly, how it can be fixed. So, over the last few years, one phrase has dominated workplace conversation called as quiet quitting. And Robbie, some say it's laziness, others call it self preservation. But what if quiet quitting is neither rebellion nor entitlement, but a signal? So, say, let's discuss this particular topic about quiet quitting.
So if you think of quite quitting, like someone as an employee is just resigning or moving on and just throwing laptop at the boss or just walking away, it doesn't. It's not like that. Actually, it refers to employees doing exactly what their job requires and nothing more. And by that, I mean is Imagine an employee walking into office at 9 a.m., going for lunch at 1, going for high tea at 4, and leaving workplace exactly at 6. There is
There's no unpaid overtime, no extra initiatives, nothing, no emotional investment.
exactly no additional activity beyond job description. In fact, you'll be surprised that according to Gallup's workplace research, at least 50% of the US workforce can be classified as quiet quitters. It means that there are employees who are not actively engaged at work, and only 32% employees are engaged. By that, I mean they are emotionally involved, they are high on spirit, enthusiastic, and they are willing to go beyond miles to do their work. And there are 18% who are actively disengaged and sometimes called as loud quitters. There are people who vocalize and loudly says that I'm not interested, no, I am not in for that activity, or no, just delegate that project to someone else, I have some other commitments. So basically, these are the type of people. And the ratio of engaged to actively disengaged employees has fallen to 1.8 raised to 1. That is the lowest in nearly a decade. So, quiet quitting is not a generational attitude problem, it is a management and engagement problem.
Yeah, because just want to add this one particular thing that a lot of employees they want to work, but the thing is that if the management or if the leadership is not concerned about what the people are, how are they getting motivated to do a certain particular work, then I think that that particular organization will have a lot of churn out. So yes, I agree with this one thing that it's not something like a attitude problem, but it's more of like a management and an engagement problem, because of course people are getting paid, but are they getting paid enough, or is the manager very rude, or is the workplace very toxic, or and that kind of there are few things that will add to people quitting without even trying.
Definitely, there could be many reasons. I remember working with you on a project with one of the largest UK-based company
Yeah.
for one of the largest bank. We were a newly formed team.
Hmm.
There were around 100 of us. So, in order to keep us engaged, our firm used to invest lakhs in quarterly event or quarterly parties and activities as such. So,
Hmm.
I remember having a drink with you and getting to know you.
Hmm.
I think that is one of the reason it is said to be a management problem, not
Hmm.
an engagement problem.
Hmm.
And in fact, you being at a leadership position, there are some common characteristics that you can look into that will help you identify quiet quitters.
Hmm.
I remember you having working with a junior who was not quite actively engaged, and you just took him out for a drink, and
Hmm.
later you got to understand him better, and there was quite clear communication, and it was that the person was not feeling much valued.
Hmm.
And when you give the person that value, now that the person is thriving. So basically, the characteristics that you can look into is that the person is just doing bare minimum work,
Correct.
that he or she is just meeting the deadlines, just doing targets and not a single percent beyond that, and do not volunteer for any additional task or activities unless forcefully assigned or designated.
Correct.
And there are people who just follow instructions, they don't give their input, their body language is defensive, and they never raise their voice, they just get the work done
Mm.
and don't take any active participation in innovation or give their valuable feedback as such. And and there are people who prefer to be like the last benches or the back benches. They will be standing not in the front but at the back of the crowd, or maybe they'll pass in comments or they'll just gossip because it's just an entertainment or time pass for them, and they're not engaged as we can see from them.
Mm.
And there are people who are emotionally detached from the organization, and to spot these people, what you can do is look for the employees who are not taking participation in the company's activities, such
Mm.
as team outings or team lunch or any part of reward ceremonies or any CSR initiatives.
Mm.
So these are the people, these are the kind of characteristics that we can look into to identify who are quite quitters.
Correct. I feel like quiet quitters maybe of two different types. One, I feel, is someone who carries the burden or baggage of a previous employment. They come to this new organization and they have just given up on the whole system. And then there are people who have been in the organization, and probably the organization has failed to do certain things that they expected, and they stop it.
Right.
They stop working on themselves, or probably they stop working on things that may go above and beyond. So I feel that there are two types of quitters, and I think there are certain things that drive these things, right?
Definitely. On a personal level, I would like to give you an example that when I joined a new firm, there was a pre-established notion or a reputation of my leader who was on a vacation during that time. So I was not welcomed by my leader, but by some other team member. And there was so much of negativity and it's so much of, you know, bad reputation about the respective leader being so strict, being so, everyone was fearful or angry, and I created that image in my mind, and I was applying that filter and interacting with that respective person. But later I found that the person is like really nice. It's just that the person is little strict and has a certain way of doing things, but it doesn't mean that the person is bad. And and the whole team has a reputation of being a quiet quitter because everyone was disengaged. No one was. It's been a year. It's been more than years that people are not willing to go out and connect other than official setup, and they're not even willing to behave as a friend. So basically, you are into a role where you are on your own. You cannot expect any support or any kind of learning from another individual.
Yes.
And further to add, Gallup identifies there are certain key drivers
Mhm.
that lead to disengagement that is made visible.
Hmm.
That if the employee has certain unclear expectations, and as an employer, if you're not setting, you know, KRAs, if you're not clearly communicating what is the ask, and if you're not making any reasonable target, that will result into unclear expectations that will definitely lead out to confusion and maybe even burnout from the employee's end. And if there are lack of growth opportunities, if you're not having regular connect, if you're not having open discussion, and if you're not in our previous podcast we discussed about the opportunities of developing skills and doing additional studies which is sponsored by the employees company. And if you're not able, or if you're not make aware of such policies, growth opportunities, as a matter of fact, if you want an internal job posting and if you're not supported, that would define one of the key drivers for quiet quitting. And if you're not if you're feeling uncared for at work, and by that I mean that if you have some personal emergency and if you need a time off, and you're doing your best, you're also meeting your target, you're independently managing your work, And even though if you ask for it, and I'm not in the mood of giving you that leverage, and I am setting up an unreasonable demand, and I'm giving, benefit or my favoritisms of some another individual, that could be one of the reason for someone to feel, uncared. And if I'm not sensitive, or if I'm not sympathetic enough, and if I don't understand
Mm.
that this is a moment where you're vulnerable and you need a break to come back strong, that could lead,
Yeah,
to disengagement
true.
and a weak connection to purpose. If I don't give a definitive target, if I don't give a role, and if I don't value you with rewards,
Mm.
and there is, it's just that we are coming daily at work, we are just showing up, and we are doing default work, and it is not purpose driven, it is not meaningful, then that is definitely going to lead to disengagement.
Correct. And one more thing I would like to add to it, I feel like there is also a really requirement of something called as the leadership or a manager relationship. Sometimes it's like quite poor.
Right.
Like you have leadership over here, you have management over here, but the employees and the management do not have any kind of engagement.
Right.
Okay, so it's like a one way relationship. They give work and they expect
Definitely.
the work to be done, which is a fair thing. Okay,
Yes.
if you look at it, but at the end of the day, if you're not acknowledging the fact that people are slogging out for you, and even people are not able to connect to you, and leadership is not engaging in
Right.
certain situations where the people need them, then there is a thing that I felt that they lose that particular passion, because nobody is even looking at us from the management. They're just here to rule over us like an authoritative leader, an autocratic leader, but there is no actual practice of communication between any one of them.
Correct. And in fact, I have seen I have seen a similar scenario where the one person was complaining to me that the leadership was lying regarding some privilege leave that was requested, and I told the person to let go, but the person was holding grudge for a while, and
Hmm.
they were not communicating with each other, which eventually led to a bitter relationship, and there was less communication, only delegation of work, only communication related to work, and the employee literally felt that the leadership is never going to understand, and they are never going to be on their side, and the person actually within span of 6 months left the organization.
Okay. In short, I would say that quiet quitting is disengagement that becomes visible, right?
Right.
It is visible. And a lot of times, if management and leadership do not look at it, it is a sign that they don't care.
Yes,
And
poor leadership.
yeah, yeah. And this is sort of a sign because this is happening.
Right.
Like, look at it from an organization perspective where so many things can go wrong. And if the organization, the management, the leadership do not look at it actively or at least proactively, then it can create a lot of issues,
Def-
and it might even hamper the growth of that organization.
right. Coming back to your example, when you took your junior for a drink, it
Hmm.
was lot of planning from your end. There was a lot of effort from your end,
Correct.
because you being the kind of a leader, you don't just value the project or the process as such. You value people, and
Yeah.
and the company and the processes are run by the people.
Yes.
And when you had open one-to-one conversation, you just got to know it was just merely a thought, that was holding you guys behind, and it was just not a misunderstanding, it was just a lack of communication, a lack of effort, which couldn't lead to a bond.
Hmm.
But now after that, things are pretty sorted.
Yeah.
So leadership has to take that initiative, because we are people. We as human, we don't just need to be feel valued, we need to feel connected. If we're spending more than 8 hours together, then it kind of, a kind of a support, because that's how we have evolved, by sticking together and and looking out for each other.
True. And speaking of how it, like, if organizations don't look at it, if leaders don't look at the signs, and this quiet quitting phenomenon can affect the organizations in the long run, right?
Yes. Definitely, because like I said, the disengagement happens at the start. Okay. So the quiet quitting becomes dangerous. It's not immediately, but it's over time.
Okay.
So, like the Harvard Business Review points out that quiet quitting can be worse than real quitting.
Okay.
And reason is because the employees are in the system.
Mm.
So they are speaking to each other. They are on the floor.
Correct.
So what happens is that they stop helping each other.
Mm.
Previously, a minutes back, we spoke how they disengage, how they stop participating. But now, here in the team,
Mhm.
they stop helping colleagues.
Mm.
And in fact, there is a change or there is any innovation that is required. They stop sharing ideas, because they are the core part of the process. They know in and out. So basically, whatever efficiency can be expected, it can be done by them only.
True.
So when they stop sharing ideas, they stop engaging in the civic behavior.
Mhm.
So these invisible actions that makes team effective,
Mhm.
it doesn't do that.
Correct.
And what happens is that slowly it leads to slower decision making.
Mhm.
Then there is this is the impact on the company.
Correct.
So you give time for them to respond and they never do, then you have to take decision on behalf of them.
Mm.
And you ask for the innovation ideas they do not do, and maybe that lowers your innovation. You ask for engagement, you ask for them to collaborate, and they take time more than what is required. It leads to weaker collaboration. So there is a cultural erosion in the team
Mm.
where you can literally see and feel that it is not running as per the company's objectives, values, or standard, or as per the requirement of the team.
True.
It is by default.
Yeah, and so these points that you're saying, that a slower decision making, lower innovation, and weaker collaboration, and somewhat cultural erosion that is happening, these are sort of discretionary efforts. Okay, although it is not on paper, but if you see, like, it people are, if they actively engage into decision making and provide innovative ideas and collaborate with each other, train each other out and create a culture, basically it will add that 10 to 20% extra, which is sort of a excellence point. Because if that disappears, the cream that you get out of a certain performance incentive that you get out of these people, that will go away.
Definitely. Because these behaviors aren't in the job description.
Correct.
Employees choose to do them.
Hmm.
And disengagement makes them choose not to.
Yeah.
Because disengaged employees, they don't leave. They quietly withdraw, you know, driving collaboration,
Hmm.
innovation, and culture from within.
Yes. And in a certain way, over time, what happens is that high performers might burn out, uh, and managers might mistreat silence as stability, and team sort of loses momentum. The same team, which I would like, let's take an example that if that particular process requires like, oh, 50, and these people, if they were doing 100, and when the team disengages and the high performance of certain employees, if they stop, the then it sort of will come down less than average, or it will meet the basic average,
Right,
but it will never go beyond that because the team has lost that momentum, right?
right.
And quiet quitting is does not cause sudden failure, it sort of causes a slow organizational decay.
Yes. And the reason is because system measures task completed, not energy, ownership, or care, that is in the people. So people, what they do is they protect themselves
Correct.
by withdrawing, by doing bare minimum,
Hmm.
while quietly withdrawing what isn't required.
And this brings me to this one point where I felt, okay, this that in a certain way it is more about psychology.
Hmm.
Don't you think that quiet quitting is more about psychology? Because in a certain way, don't you think that somehow we are sort of hardwired to quiet quit?
Definitely. If, you know, quiet quitting may be linked to a brain response, which is known as default passivity.
Hmm.
Okay. So imagine you are in situation which is, new to you.
Mhm.
Okay. And first, what you will do is, rather than thriving or doing your best, you will observe first.
Correct.
Okay. So when repeated efforts produces no meaningful reward or control,
Mhm.
okay, then the default is passive withdrawal rather than active resistance.
Okay.
Okay. So basically, what happens is that this is disengagement and reduce discretionary effort.
Mhm.
And the brain, what it does is calculate that pushing harder won't change any outcome.
Correct.
So yes, it is. We can say it's an adaptive self protection.
Mhm.
So what happens is, what you experience is, as a human, that you're into prolonged stress, that you're not happy, and
Mhm.
you have to go to work. You have to face people which you don't like, and you know that the things are out of your control. You cannot change this,
Mhm.
and you have no other job opportunity, and you have to, on that, the KRAs and the targets, they never change, and you have to put as much effort which is required, which you don't want to.
Correct.
So your brain naturally conserves energy. So instead of fighting endlessly, it disengages. So this was once described as learned helplessness.
Mhm.
But modern research suggests that passivity is actual the default neurological response to sustained adversity.
Okay.
And if you just put this psychological pattern into a corporate setup,
Mhm.
it looks like that the feedback doesn't matter to you. Whatever happens, happens. Decisions feels pointless. And no matter what you do, your efforts are never going to get recognized. So
Okay.
that is why they do not rebel. They do not challenge the system, and they do not try to change anything. So innovations is never the part of it.
Mm.
So what they do is they withdrew.
Mm.
So quiet quitting, then, it isn't laziness. It's
Mm.
just the brain saying that trying harder doesn't change outcomes. And once that belief sets in, disengagement is the one thing that seems right.
Yeah. Makes sense because not like what happens is sometimes I have also noticed that certain people, they were once so motivated and they were so charged up that they wanted to change the whole world in terms of their corporate world basically, and then those same employees after a year or 2 years, they don't seem to be going anywhere because obviously a lot of things that they expected didn't happen. So I agree with this particular study that was, I think I read about this somewhere in Harvard Business Review. I believe it was a study that was done by the Harvard Business Review, right?
Right.
Or it was a study that was posted in Harvard Business Review. I'm so sorry. And like we spoke about the problems, like, but how quiet quitting can be reversed.
Okay. The good news is that it's not permanent.
Mhm.
Okay. Both Gallup and Harvard Business Review agree that engagement can be rebuilt, but only if organizations change behaviors and not slogans.
Okay.
So, for that, what can be done is, managers have the biggest influence on engagement.
Correct.
Okay. And many managers themselves aren't engaged, which hurts things. So, what we can do is we can fix the management first.
Mhm.
And for that, what can be done is that, as a part of being a good manager, you can have meet regularly for meaningful check-in with the team,
Mhm.
monthly or quarterly maybe,
Mhm.
respond in a very respectful manner, and not just do things to make employee feel valued, genuinely believe in it.
Correct.
And if we look at the characteristics we discussed earlier that led to quiet quitting, we can just reverse that.
Mm.
Maybe you can have a clear expectations. You can set clear target, reasonable target. Explain why it is important, why it is critical, and clearly, explain what is expected.
Correct.
Don't give just vague or confusing goals, and remove roadblocks for employees. If you feel that, okay, if a certain employee is not, I won't say incompetent, needs to build a certain skill set, then train that employee. And for that training, give a reasonable period of time, and put it into demonstration. Give proper feedback. and remove such roadblocks,
Okay.
or any personal roadblocks are there in terms of family issue, give that employee a break, because you can, all you can do exercise your power and support the employees
Mm.
as a manager. And instead of micromanaging, looking into employees every activity, coach and guide, and give space and wait for the result.
Correct.
And another thing you can do is you can restore autonomy. Okay, so Harvard Business Review emphasizes that control reverse passivity. So every small choices that is matter, how work is done, you know, how, when work is done, and when projects, which projects employee join.
Mm.
Okay, it's all in your hand. You as a manager, you can decide, you can evaluate, you can in fact communicate and discuss and mutually see what is best for both the company and the employee.
Okay. Like,
So,
for example, I think I have this one example wherein I remember we had done this, and there was this small project where there was a merger happening on between two entities, and there were people that we had assigned to this particular project where we said that okay, this there is a merger happening, and there are these 4 to 5 entities that you have to work on. So why don't you work on this? You decide how you want to do this particular thing, and but the thing is that we have this particular deadline that okay, we need it by the end of the year, so we still have like 3 months to do this, and I think you guys can work on this particular thing, uh, and we assigned the seniors to it because it's a merger and acquisition situation. So why don't these 4 employees join in, because these people have been part of the project and for a while, like at least 1 or 2 years or 3 years of experience, and these 4 people I think can close this particular merger and acquisition review. And we have a considerable amount of 3 months, so I think it would be more than enough to close it out. So I think we did that, and you won't believe, but that whole project was done within 1.5 month, even before the year end came in. So I felt that yeah, this does work. Yes, I
right.
agree with that.
And another thing, what you can do is make growth visible
Mm-hmm.
for an employee. Okay, so employee needs skill development,
Mm-hmm.
okay, learning pathways, or you can have conversation about the future. So for that, we have an example. Okay, imagine an employee named Priya, and she has been doing some data analysis tasks for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in our previous podcast, we discussed about stagnation and stability.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in terms of loyalty, so she doesn't see any growth part as such, because she feels her job is stagnant and there is no growth, and she feels stuck. So what can manager do is, manager can set up a skill building plan for her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe, learning advanced analytics tools, or maybe a third party application or something that will, that together collaborate, maybe work on another projects that we, scale up a business.
Mm-hmm.
Or they manager can have a mentorship session
Mm-hmm.
to explore her future roles,
Correct.
because she's feeling stuck and stagnant. And there has to be open dialogue, and they can have quarterly check-ins or discussions to outline the promotion path.
Mm-hmm.
Now that what Priya will see is, she will see the progress and feel that her effort contributes to growth and not waste time. And another solution is that recognize meaning, not hustle. And by that I mean, the recognition doesn't mean glorifying burnout.
Correct.
It means acknowledging contribution, connecting work to purpose, and valuing impact, not hours.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same example, if PI is working late one night finishing a report, but a manager only praises the insight and impact of her analysis, not her extra hours. And the manager also connects her work to business outcome,
Mm-hmm.
showing how it helps the company succeed. So Priya feels valued for her contribution and not punishing for doing too little or too much.
Yeah.
So the result is that she re-engages and invests discretionary effort because it feels meaningful and sustainable.
Right.
So extra effort must feel meaningful and sustainable.
Okay. So really insightful whatever you have pointed out, Robbie. And I felt that quiet quitting is not like a trend, it's more of like a signal, right? Like a signal that is sort of engagement has been neglected, managers are overwhelmed, systems reward compliance over commitment. Okay, and people don't quit loudly when they feel powerless, they quit very quietly. And for leaders this is like a very clear message that you can't demand engagement, you have to design that particular system in such a way that employees, they understand their own value into their system, and basis that when they create their own value they'll be engaged more actively, is what I feel. And for employees as well, okay, people, you guys have to also understand that quiet quitting helps you ask a critical question: am I protecting my own energy, or I have stopped believing that efforts matter? Okay, so, with this, thank you for listening to Corporate Elements. And if this episode resonated with you, share it with your manager or teammate or someone navigating disengagement at work. And till until next time, stay aware, stay intentional, and stay engaged.
Just
Cheers.